Hi there, my name is Caitlin Bandy and this is my channel BandysBooks, and today we are here to talk about my September TBR. And when I say my TBR this month, I really do mean kind of a pile of possibilities. So September is going to be a strange month for me because I am leaving for a couple weeks. Oz and I are taking a trip to Guatemala for the second half of September. So I will be home from the 1st of September through the 18th of September. And then I will be leaving to Guatemala for the last 2 weeks. While it is entirely likely that I'll bring a book or two with me to Guatemala, maybe one physical book and then a couple books on my Kindle or in my audiobooks, my goal in Guatemala is not to be focused on reading. My goal there is to spend time with Oz, enjoy a vacation, decompress a bit. We're gonna be hiking a volcano. I have a scuba diving course that I'm going to be taking. I'm a rescue scuba diver, but I'm going to do a specialty license for altitude diving while I'm there. We're going to be eating at some really cool restaurants. We're going to be going to see some Mayan ruins, a whole bunch of stuff. So really, like, reading is just not my priority. We do have a couple longer bus rides, so I will likely read during those. But that means that instead of the usual 30 days that I have to read, I have just like really 18 days and maybe a couple extra if I'm lucky. So I set myself a ambitious TBR by any month standards. And so I already know that it's gonna be virtually impossible for me to finish everything that I've picked out. The problem is there's so much cool stuff going on in September that I really had a hard time narrowing it down to a small list. So that being said, this is a pile of possibilities. I have a small stack of books for each of the different readathons or events that I am trying to participate in this month. And hopefully I will try to get to 1 or 2 books from each of these piles. And if I can do that, I'll be super happy. So September is a month of amazing readathons. There is Shorty September, there's Straya September, Series September. Like, there's a ton more than just those. Those are only the ones that I'm participating in. So we're gonna start with a couple of the different readathons, and I'll tell you what I have kind of picked out as a possibility for those ones. So first up, we're going to be talking about Straya September. This is a readathon focused on Australian books and authors. This is being hosted by Scott over at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. He is one of my absolute favorite channels here on BookTube. So if you haven't seen his channel already, make sure you find him in my description box below and go check him out. You will not regret it. I am woefully lacking in having read Australian authors. In fact, when I started planning for this, I couldn't even think of an Australian author. I was talking it over with my mom, and the first thing she said was Jane Harper. And funny enough, I actually do have a Jane Harper book on my shelves, The Survivors, and I don't know anything about it. This was a book I picked up at a library sale a long time ago and kind of forgot that I had, but it does count because she is an Australian author. But that wasn't one of the books I was originally intending on reading. Scott made a great recommendation video with like 30 amazing recommendations. So I've whittled it down to the handful I think I want to read the most. The first book that I have for Straya September is When Things Are Alive, They Hum by Hannah Bent. This is a book about 2 sisters, Marlo and Harper. Harper has Down syndrome and a congenital heart defect. Marlo, at 25, has finally gotten her sister to a happy place, and she's moved abroad and is kind of living her own life for the first time when she receives a call that Harper's heart is starting to fail. Marlo rushes home to be with Harper, and they deal with a maddening system that doesn't value Harper or getting her a heart transplant because she has Down syndrome. This book sounds like it's gonna just make me sob. I'm not somebody that gets overly emotional about books, but I just have a feeling that this one is gonna be a punch to the gut. In researching this book, I did find that this author actually was born and grew up in Hong Kong, and she did return to Australia to go to uni, but now lives in Hong Kong again. But so I'm curious, is this actually an Australian author, or does she count as an author from Hong Kong? The second book I have picked out for this qualifies both for Straya September and for Shorty September, and that's Cold Enough for Snow by Jessica Out. I found very little information about this book aside from the fact that it is a mother and a daughter, and they travel to Japan, and the book is a reflection of their trip and like the things that are happening to them as they journey. They're talking about like a lot of emotional topics and reflecting on life, but at some point the book calls into question if it's just the daughter speaking or if there's something else going on. This book comes in at 99 pages, which is perfect for that Shorty September pile as well, and means that I'll likely be able to get to it because it's going to be a fairly quick read. Then we're going to be reading All That's Left Unsaid by Tracy Leanne. This follows a young Vietnamese Australian woman who returns to her family after the shocking murder of her brother, and she's just determined to find out what happens. So all 30 of the books in the recommendation video sounded amazing, and I've added them all to my TBR to be read at some point. But this one, something about the cover of it really spoke to me, and growing up in a predominantly Vietnamese community, I thought it would be really interesting to hear about Vietnamese perspective from Australia. Then I have Bodies of Light by Jennifer Down. I believe Scott described this as one of the most depressing books he's ever read. I just got done with A Little Life, and apparently that wasn't depressing enough for me. So I want to see if this one's going to be a little bit more depressing. When someone says it's the most depressing thing they've ever read, I want my heart to break. So we're going to try again with this one. After that, I have The White Girl by Toni Birch. This is the story of one Native Australian family and the racist government that tries to separate them. This sounds amazing. I wanted to make sure that I tried to pick out one book at least that was from the perspective of a Indigenous Australian author. So this was one of Scott's recommendations, and it sounds really good. Then we have Series September, which is being hosted by Sarah at Sarah's Nightstand and Krista at Books and Jams. Both Krista and Sarah are very lovely. I've had the chance to interact with both of them, and I really enjoy their channels. Series September has two different options. There is a bingo card that you can participate with, which gives you specific prompts to follow, or you can go the route that I am and you just read a book from a series or try to complete a series. You just set yourself some sort of a goal around a series. So I have several series that have been sitting on my bookshelf for forever that I have not gotten to. I have several uncompleted series as well. So I thought that this was a good chance for me to pick up a series I've been holding on to for a really long time. So for Series September, I am going to be reading the Arc of a Scythe series by Neil Shusterman. I have, I believe, 3 of the 4 books, and the 4th one I can always get like as an audio or an ebook from Libby. I have heard that these are amazing. Obviously, you can see that they have won awards, and everyone that I know that's read these have really raved about them. From what I understand, this is about a society in which we have overcome death and disease and war, and people don't die of natural causes anymore. The only way that they can actually die is that someone who is a scythe has to go and collect their life. And I believe this is going to follow 2 different students who become apprentices to a scythe very reluctantly. They're not really interested in being scythes themselves, but they're going to have to master the art of culling lives, or else they might risk losing their own lives. I am excited to finally start this. I don't know why I've been so hesitant to jump into it. And then I have 3 other potentials for Series September, 2 of which also cross over to Shorty September. So I have Mammoths at the Gate by Nevo. This is book 4 in the Singing Hills cycle. I have been loving this series. They're very short little novellas that follow like a monastery, and they're just really interesting books. It's a bit of a departure from some of Nevo's other works. Like if you've read Siren Queen, this is a complete different ballpark from that. And then I have Mislaid in Parts Half Known by Shannon McGuire. This is the next book in the Wayward Children series. I have been loving this series. I binge read the entire series back in May during Nevermoreathon. And these are a series of novellas about children who find like magical doors into different worlds. And each child finds a different world, and each book is told about the world that they were in, their experience going through the doors, or their experience assimilating with the world when they returned. I find it very whimsical and interesting. It's just kind of a fun, easy, well, some of them are a little bit darker, but for the most part, a fun, easy read. So I got an ARC of the next book coming out in the series. I'm really looking forward to getting into it. And then my last selection for Series September is Murder and Mammon by Mia P. Manansala. This is the 4th book in Tita Rosie's Kitchen Stories. This one was so close to counting for Shorty September too. It's like 280 pages, and I think the cutoff for Shorty September was 250. So close, but not quite there. This is a murder mystery. It is a cozy mystery, basically. And the thing that I love about this series is that it is so full of Filipino culture and Filipino food. I love the way the author incorporates just so many delicious recipes and mouthwatering dishes, things that I grew up with. And then, as you've heard me mention a couple times, I will be reading for Shorty September. This is hosted by Heather at Soggy Expat Book Nerd and Bert at Pastory Time 2683. So the goal of Shorty September is to read books that are under 250 pages. I think that you can kind of determine what you want to read. I don't think there's specific prompts. It's just like the length of the book. So as I've mentioned, I have one book in Straya September and a couple of my series books that qualify for Shorty September. So I already have a few reads there, but I picked a few things off of my shelf as well that also qualify. So I have Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. This is a classic, one that I've been meaning to get to for a while. I also have Down and Out in Paris and London by George Orwell. I have only ever read 1984 by George Orwell, so I'm really interested to see what one of his other books would be like. And then I have Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This was a National Book Award winner, and Ta-Nehisi Coates is one of my favorite writers, so I definitely want to try to fit this in if I can. Then I have Metal and Bone by T. Kingfisher. I have read 2 books by T. Kingfisher this year. I have enjoyed them. This looks like a pretty good one, and it fits in just at like 240 pages. So if I need a break, something a little bit more fantastical, then this might be a good one. My last pick for Shorty September is Bola by Pajtim Statovici. This is a book, I believe, about the war in Bosnia and Serbia, and about 2 men who have a relationship and are kind of separated by the war. I've had this one on my shelf for such a long time and I keep meaning to get to it. So those are my possibilities for Shorty September, as well as the few books that I mentioned previously. Also going on this month is the start of Hispanic Heritage Month. From, I believe, September 15th to October 15th, we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month here in the United States. I try to make sure that I celebrate all the different heritage months, especially in terms of my reading. I want to make sure that I'm highlighting authors from the background being celebrated. So in this case, we're celebrating Latin American authors and Caribbean authors. So I have a stack of books that fit into that. So first up, I have The Book of Rosie, A Mother's Story of Separation at the Border by Rosalia Pablo Cruz and Julie Schweidert Collazo. So if I remember correctly, in this book, Rosie is fleeing from Guatemala. She makes the dangerous trek through Mexico and gets to the border where she and her child are separated. And I believe this is about their detention in separate places and her fight to get her child back. This is a true story, heartbreakingly so. And then I have The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is one of the few books left by Moreno Garcia that I have not read yet. This is about people that have telekinetic powers. I haven't heard a ton about this book. The little bit that I have heard has been that it's just kind of so-so, but I think it's really hard to say with her because I feel like since she switches genres and eras and styles so frequently, like you might love one book and then hate the next one. So I like to try every single one of her books and see. And then I have Caramelo by Sandra Cisneros. This is about a young girl named Sayala whose family takes a trip every year to Mexico City to visit her grandparents. And this is about kind of her finding her own voice. Sandra Cisneros is the author of The House on Mango Street, and for me that was a formative read. We had to read that in, I want to say 5th grade, and I remember reading it and being so fascinated with the little vignettes that she wrote and the life that it captured, the Southern California imagery. Like there was so much that I recognized from her writing and so much I related to, and also parts that were so completely different from what I grew up with. And I just remember really, really loving that book. I actually have a copy of it written in Spanish now, and it was one of the first books that I ever read in Spanish. You can see like where I took a pen and highlighted words I didn't know and then added translations. It's full of notes, and it's one of my most treasured books. So when I saw this by Cisneros, I went ahead and picked it up. And then I have In the Time of Butterflies by Julia Alvarez. This is set in the Dominican Republic. This follows 3 different sisters who've died in a car accident under suspicious circumstances. And then I have 2 books by Elizabeth Acevedo. I have Clap When You Land and With the Fire on High. This book, Clap When You Land, is about the loss of a father, and With the Fire on High is about a young girl who gets pregnant during her freshman year of high school. I have heard that Acevedo is a phenomenal writer. Everyone that I know that reads her books seems to really love them. I know that she wrote Poet X, and I haven't read that one yet either, which I hear is like her best book, but I have both of these here handy, and so I'm looking forward to getting into them. And then I have Ordinary Girls by Yakira Diaz. This is a memoir of her life growing up between Miami and Puerto Rico with kind of a dysfunctional situation. I think my mom has this one and is reading it as well and said it was pretty good. I have had this on my shelf for forever. I think I picked this up from a library resale, and I keep meaning to read it, and so I think this is the perfect month. And then I have On a Night of 1,000 Stars by Andrea Yagyura Clark. This deals with Argentina in the 1970s during La Guerra Sucia, or the Dirty War. This was a coup d'etat that overthrew the government of Argentina and installed a extremely harsh dictatorship and ended up disappearing something like 50,000 citizens. So this book is set during this time period and deals with this particular conflict. That's all I know about it. I think the cover is stunning and I think the subject matter is very interesting. So I think I'm gonna definitely try to get to this one. And then I have a couple books on my NetGalley shelf that will fit in with my reading for Hispanic Heritage Month. I have Familia by Lauren E. Rico. This is a story about sisterhood and self-discovery that starts with a baffling genealogy test that connects two 20-something-year-old girls in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And then I have What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. This is about a Bolivian Argentinian socialite whose mother and father die abroad. And she's kind of pulled into the mystery and ends up in Egypt trying to figure out what happened to them. And then I have My Side of the River by Elizabeth Camarillo Gutierrez. This is a memoir of Elizabeth's life growing up as a US-born daughter of Mexican immigrant parents. When she turns 15 years old, her parents' visas expire and they are forced to return to Mexico, leaving her in this weird limbo. I requested this ARC because this sounds so moving and poignant. As I've mentioned before, San Diego has a huge immigrant population. Where my family lives, we're only like 20 minutes from the border. And so this is a story that we hear a lot. I have had friends, partners, etc. that have had family that have been forced to return, leaving children behind. And it's just a horrific situation for someone to be in. So I am very curious to hear Camarillo Gutierrez's story. That is the end of my pile of possibilities. We have Straya September, Shorty September, Series September, and Hispanic Heritage Month. It's a lot of books. I'm gonna do the best that I can to get through as many as I can before I leave to Guatemala. And then based on what I have left, I'll try to sneak one or two in my backpack for my trip. And then of course, while I'm in Guatemala, I'm sure I'll be keeping my eyes out for bookstores, and if I find a bookstore, I'll probably go in and see if I can find any books by local authors. I do read in Spanish, so I would be super, super excited to be introduced to some new authors that write in Spanish in particular. So maybe I will add a few books while I'm down there. So that being said, wish me luck. And if you like this video, hit the thumbs up, comment down below, and let me know, what are you planning to read in September? Are you pantsing it? Do you have a TBR picked out? Are you like me, where you have kind of a pile of possibilities or like a general outline? What events are you reading for? Tell me all of the details. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button down below, as well as the notification bell so that you never miss a video. And that way we can see each other again soon. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.